Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. So good to be with you today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Ray Samich, and I'd like to introduce everybody to my longtime radio colleague, co-host of my show, and of course, my dear spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Outstanding, thank you. And love being with you and talking about all the different topics that we share over the last 30 years. Hard to believe. And this one, though, is really near and dear to me, Ratanjit. I think as I have gone through life, gone through business, and all the different trials and tribulations that life brings its way, every day I see the power of empathy, understanding it. And I'm so glad we're talking about it because there just seems to be less empathy in the world today. Am I imagining that, or do you feel that way too?
That is absolutely the case. The main reason of that we are going to talk about, and empathy is something which you cannot have by will. I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to have more empathy. And you can say, there's a common sentence Bill Clinton used to use. And he would say, I share your pains. I understand your pain. I understand your suffering.
I feel your pain, right? Didn't he even say?
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
And now, generally, that would mean that, oh my goodness, he's very empathetic. But he was not. I think we should start with this fundamental, what causes empathy, what is integral to empathy. There was an article on neuroscience study, and in New York Times in 2014, and it was, the heading was "Powerful and Cold-Hearted."
Mm-hmm.
And that article was amazing. He said that research studies show that people with high position of power, who believe themselves to be powerful, are less able to adopt the visual and cognitive and emotional perspective of other people. That is what empathy is. Empathy is able to relate to suffering of other people.
Right.
And now the reason they gave was that all of us have what we call mirror neurons in our brain. Mirror means they are reflective.
Mm-hmm.
They can reflect others' pain in our brain directly. And that is why you see that in the children who are most empathetic, because they are totally not associated with power. And that is why the children basically get the reflection of the habits of their parents. They copy those habits. They don't understand the lecture we are giving them. We are no matter how much we tell them, they will basically copy your habits. If you want them to be honest, practice honesty in front of them. If you want to be kind, practice kindness in front of them. And those are the habits which you have to cultivate. So one of the fundamental of parenting is that you have to change your habit before the children arrive.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are going to basically reflect your habits. Now, they to prove this point, they did a amazing, simple experiment. You know, they noticed that if there is a motion, if you take a rubber ball and compress it, and your activity of that rubber ball would be noticed by the mirror neurons. They will start to, you have the activity and the mirror neurons. So they use that technique to measure the activity of mirror neurons in various people. So they voluntarily collected some people and they gave them two options: either write an essay on their achievements, what they are proud of, and or write an essay which made them which they are very grateful for, rather than proud or egoic. And there are, other words, good times and bad times. They write either on what they experience, and after finishing the essay, basically the purpose of this essay was to transport your brain, your thinking, into power mode. I did this. I'm proud of this, and or I'm grateful for this. So when they measure they wire their brains and measure the activity of the mirror neurons by playing this video, which is compressing the balls with the hand, and they notice very high activity in the people who were grateful, but they find very little activity in the people who wrote essay about their greatness. So our society is used this word so commonly. I'm proud of. I'm proud of my children. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my this. And you see this constantly used in every aspect. And this sentence we are uttering, you are transporting your brain into power mode. And your activity of the mirror neuron gets reduced. And you become less empathetic.
So,
Right?
we've talked about this study before. It is fascinating, and it's interesting. You said they talk about their greatness versus their gratefulness, right? Two words that are pretty similar, but they absolutely have a different meaning and a different result. When you talk about your greatness, your ego takes over. When you talk about your gratefulness, you become humble and thankful for whatever you have received, not because of you, but maybe even in spite of you. So I love that, okay, and how that absolutely can prove that if we're not in a mode of thinking of others, we're only in the mode of thinking about us, we're obviously not practicing empathy. And as you said, even scientifically, you can't do it. Even if I said, yeah, I'm going to be more empathetic today, if you're in a state of high ego, you have no mirror neuron activity, so you cannot relate. You cannot reflect what other people are thinking or feeling. So I'm in sync with you. What I heard you say in the beginning of the definition, though, when you gave a definition a few minutes ago, you said, is it people that have high cognitive activity are unable to practice empathy? Something like that. Is the is the activity of the brain, is the intellect portion of the brain, is that counter to feeling empathy, or do you have to use your brain to, or the intellectual side of the brain? Let me be clear.
To
What
have
I'm
empathy, you have to have observe somebody. You have to have high visual observation. You have high cognitive capabilities. You have to have high emotional perspective. So all these three things are reduced when you feel powerful.
so here's what I'm trying to say, and I know I'm not expressing it perfectly, but I often think about when I try to practice empathy, I use my brain to try to say, how do I think they're thinking? How are they interpreting what I'm saying, and what are they going through in their life? And I try to use my intellectual abilities to think in that way about them. But when I read some of the definitions about true empathy, it's more about feelings than about thoughts.
Yes,
And
yes.
so it used the words, one of the definitions that I love the most, it says you peak your senses so that you are aware of the feelings that the other person is feeling. So you can sense their feelings, not figure out their thoughts.
You
And
experience their
that's a
pain
big
and suffering.
distinction.
You
Was that?
experience, we experience their pain and suffering. That's the feeling.
Yeah.
And you are not uh, understanding the thinking behind it as clearly as the result of their thinking, which is result into pain and suffering.
So, we're prone to try to figure things out, right? I mean, even male versus female, it's been scientifically shown that the males always want to know why and how, and what made you feel this way, and how did this happen, and everything. And the bottom line is it really doesn't matter, right? If you're empathetic, it doesn't matter what results caused someone to have certain feelings. Being that, for example, they could have been a total victim of something that was, not their fault. Or on the other side of the spectrum, it could have been something they did, something bad that they did that caused the bad result. It doesn't really matter. We put ourselves with our brains into thinking about, well, why is this happening? What we really need to do is just to connect with where they are right now, irrelevant of how they got there. Is that right?
Yes, you know, connected to empathy is communication. If you do not understand what is effective communication is, you are not going to be able to communicate with the person you are trying to empathize. You are not going to get the total reflection because the reflection of the mirror neuron is true, but the communication is, as expert again tell us, is basically we focus on the words, on the language, but they find the language only contributes towards communication 7%. No matter how sophisticated your language is, how this is, there's a story about a young child who moved into the new community, and he made a friend and with the neighbors, and they were playing. And this neighbor's voice says, let's go in the jungle. Let's go behind. So this new boy said, no, I can't go there. You know why? So my father is going to get mad. So he saw when he was angry only the madness. He missed the words completely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the tone of the language contributes close to, let's see, 39%. And the body language is 54%. So if your body language and tone is not in place, it won't make any difference. Now, what really controls your body language and your tone? Is it your intelligence or skill or experience, education, culture, nationality, color, race, age, faith, or all these things? Basically, they are controlled by empathy.
Wow.
Empathy is the bottom line which you need to communicate. Otherwise, you are not able to communicate with others if you don't have empathy. Right?
That's powerful when you think about being empowered by empathy. We've talked about those numbers before, and I think this is such an important part. Even though let's talk about it a little bit more today. We all think that the words are the most important part. We think over and over. If we have to make an important speech, we have to go in and talk to the boss. We want to talk with our spouse about a difficult situation. We have to talk to our children to try to help them with a problem. We think about the words so much. We focus on that. What are the exact best words that I can use in this situation that's going to achieve the result that I want? With all of that emphasis and all of that thought and all of that concern about that, to think that that's 7% of the total effectiveness of communication is just mind-boggling, because we don't pay attention to 93%. Okay, so that's the first point to really make sure people understand. Words are so important. The power of words are amazing and they're effective, but they're only 7% of communication. That's staggering. But then let's move on to that tone. And I found out, because, and you do too, we both speak a lot in front of groups of people, or even one-on-one in conversations. The tone absolutely is critical. It is, sometimes you get yelled at by somebody. You are in the middle of a really difficult, challenging conversation, and yet if the tone is pleasant, if the tone is reassuring, if the tone is gentle and kind, you can almost say anything. I mean, the words that you use in the right tone, are just overwhelmed by the kindness of the tone, and vice versa. You could be delivering a beautiful compliment, but if you do it with, anger in your voice and meanness in your tone, you lose the total effect of the compliment. I mean, it's
But the
those
question
two. I
is,
want to move on to the third one, but that's a big distinction there.
hold on. The
Okay.
question is, what brings the right tone in you?
Well, so let's
And
talk for a moment before we go on to that.
unless you have the empathy for the person, the tone is not going to come in the right
Can
place.
you fake it? Can you fake the tone? we think about the words. If we know that the tone is important, can we fake it?
But it won't get through. The
It won't, huh?
fakeness, yeah, until you have the true empathy, really feel others' pain, suddenly your tone will fall in place.
Okay.
So
See, I
what
know
comes?
you cannot, I know you can't fake the body language. I know that that is our human body showing what's really inside, and the experts, the police detectives and things, they know the signs. They know what we do with our body language. That's a dead giveaway to what you're really saying, what you're really thinking, what you really are trying to get away with by covering it up. I know we can't hide our body language. That's really, really difficult. But I didn't know if we could fake our tone, if we could pretend to be caring and empathetic and compassionate, even if we're not. You think you really can't get away with that either?
No, not really.
Okay. All right. It'll catch up to you. Maybe you can for a short time, but then the real you shows through.
I think you should take a
Let's take a
break.
break. It's a good time to do it. But this last point about the body language, about the eye contact, our willingness to look people in the eye, our willingness to use our hand emotions and our gestures, our the way we're moving towards somebody or moving back towards somebody, the positioning of our feet, it's all been thoroughly scientifically proven that the body language is just so automatic based on what's inside. So
But if,
when we
if you
come
look
back,
in, but if you look into eyes and concentrate on what you are told, but if you have no empathy, you will convey the wrong message.
that's what I want to come back with. I want to really talk about how our empathy affects the subtle actions of our body that we don't even know. And perhaps that's why we're so poorly communicating with people, because we don't even have such a poor foundation for communication. This is Stress Free Living. We'll be back in just a moment. Before we open it up, Ratanjit, do you see the number? Do you want to put that number in your phone? They've been trying to get in, and I'm hesitant to let them into our. Do you see it on the top of your screen? Do you recognize that number? I guess I can let them in during the break here, and we can find out who they are.
Yeah.
I'll just be on guard here in case it's
What is the number?
248. It's a 248 area code
No, that is not.
431.
Okay. No,
Is
no,
it Vinod?
nothing.
Who is this?
I don't know. The person that we just admitted, the 248 number area code, please identify yourself. Unmute yourself and please
Unmute yourself.
press on your icon, and otherwise I will need to remove you. I apologize, but we can't take a chance on a live show. There we go. Brian.
Oh my goodness.
This is
Okay.
Brian.
Thank you, Brian. We welcome you.
I was
Thank you
trying
for
to get
joining
in,
us.
I couldn't get admitted.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry
because
for
we
being
don't
late.
unless
I've
we
been
have the
trying to get
name.
in.
Thank you. We're
Okay.
glad you're with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to say something here? We have a few seconds left. I'm sorry that we lost a part of the break. Anyone have a thought?
What I heard
Yes.
about empathy, in the last part of the discussion was about visual contact and feeling, but it comes from within. I feel, it's an inner feeling of understanding and kindness, and you can't fake that. If you're trying to send that message and understanding of what someone else is going through or feeling, I feel that it comes from the soul. It has to be shared from within, and if you don't feel that way,
We are back on Stress Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us today. Ratanjit and yours truly, Ray Samich, with you. On our breaks, we talk with our wonderful Zoom audience. If you would like to be a part of that, we urge you to join us. And you can check out and get that link on our YouTube Stress Free Living Radio channel. Just put that into YouTube, Stress Free Living Radio. You'll find over 100 programs that have been recorded for you, all kinds of topics, but you'll also find the link so that you can join us here on our Zoom calls, as well as through our normal radio and internet listening. Ratanjit, one of the conversations we were having, which caused a little delay here to get started again, what is the clarity? What do you think is the difference? We're talking about the brain that has an intellectual side. And again, I was always thinking empathy like I'm thinking what you're thinking. So I'm using the intellectual part of my brain. And then there's the emotional side of the brain, which is where I'm trying to feel what you're feeling, which I think in the case of empathy is more important. But then, as one of our guests just talked about, the soul from inside, or maybe we refer to it as the heart. And we know the heart's just an organ, but we think of the heart as where the feeling takes place. Is there such a thing? I mean, is there something, are there feelings that you have in your soul? Are there feelings that you have in your heart that are distinct from what we are thinking or feeling in our brain? Or are these just, mishmash of words?
You know, in our body, your heart doesn't think. Your
Right.
feelings all are in the brain, although we use the heart when our portion of our brain which is engaged is emotional, which is empathetic, and that is what we call as a heart.
Mhm.
Basically, that is what is empathy means you have reflected in your brain, in your mirror neurons, others' pains and feeling of others' pains, not questioning why it happened and this and that. Question is different. So a person who is able to address that issue, once you have to have the feeling of that pain in you. That is only what is going to incentivize to act. Now, empathy, by having an empathy, doesn't mean that you are going to act.
Right.
Empathy only gives you the feeling. To act, you have to have compassion. Empathy, when it is converted into doing something for somebody, it comes out of compassion. Love and empathy, when combined together, becomes compassion.
Okay. I want to
And
go there in a moment. I want to go back to you eliminated the heart, which we all kind of know that the heart doesn't think, doesn't feel. What about the soul, though, Ratanjit? What about that real us inside of us? We can call it a soul, we can call it divine power, whatever we want to refer to it as. Is there feeling in there? Is there is is that where we ultimately process our empathy for others, or is it done in our brain?
ultimately, it's all connected to our brain. And soul means the life itself, which is existing in this human body. And brain, to act, you have to have the soul. In absence of soul, brain is absent. The
Okay.
soul is the universal divine power which is present in each one of us. It's like a light bulb connected to the powerhouse. Without the electricity in the light bulb, it does not get lit. It's not alive. So similarly, this human body is the light bulb, and the divine power, which is the life, which is connecting our human system with that power which empowers us. This is a continuous connection, just like electricity is flowing continuously to that light bulb. So
So,
that
so
power,
go ahead, go ahead.
that power is your soul, that power is your real thing, but expression and feeling is given to us in this capacity of the brain.
So for everyone that has, the same type of brain, and 99.9% of us do, there's a few exceptions, but we all basically have the same brain. Why do some people have a very easy ability to be empathetic? It's just a part of their nature, and you immediately can connect to them. You immediately feel comfortable with them, even if you just met them. When you and I sat down the very first time 30 years ago, we instantly had a connection. It was just spontaneous the moment that our eyes made contact. Okay. Why can you connect to some people so quickly, so easily, and yet others you could know for 30 years and you don't feel any connection? Is empathy a part of what I'm talking about?
Empathy is the result of absence of ego. Empathy, when ego clouds your brain, you stop the activity of mirror neuron, which is reflective of others' pain and suffering, and others' heart, others' feeling. You become very we are linked together in absence of ego, presence of gratefulness. When I'm grateful, I see the divinity present in you. So my respect to you is not because of the degrees and the title and the money and the power you have. My respect to you is because of the presence of the divinity in you, which is enlivening you. Once that is understood, then what happens is all the great things I conceive and do, I don't do that alone. Even if my brain is very intelligent, very creative, and I created so many new things, and normally I'm proud of that. But when you realize that in the absence of oxygen being available to brain doesn't function. And where do you find the oxygen? You never made that. That's available to you. You're never grateful for that. So you never able to achieve anything alone. You are connected with the universe. You are connected. The power which enlivens you makes your brain available to you. And the oxygen supply and the blood supply by the heart to your brain gives you the capacity to think creatively. So your intelligence and all that is a gift, a result of all these things. And when we take the full credit, that is wrong. That is why ego and being proud is telling the universe, I am it. You are disconnecting the universal wisdom from your brain when you are proud, when you're egoist, right?
So to review, when you are strong with your ego, when your ego takes over, then it's almost impossible to show empathy, to feel empathy. when you are in a state of gratefulness, you're much more likely than to feel empathy. These are not automatics, but it puts you into a foundational level where if ego, empathy is tough. Gratefulness, empathy is much easier. When you said with our divine power, recognizing that we are one and that we're connected with everybody else through that same divine power, the same in divine power is in you as in me and as in her and in him. That doesn't automatically lead to empathy, though, does it? I mean, the reality of that, the beauty of that, the power of that is great, but that alone doesn't make us empathetic, or does it?
Basically, it removes the ego. When you
Okay,
realize
you're right.
that your human body is a gift to you, you never made it.
Okay,
And,
you're right. So
and
automatically with that reality, you have less ego or no ego, and you have more gratefulness.
yes,
So, okay, makes sense. I get that. All right, good. Very good. So that is a real, I mean, we always talk about how important it is to know who we really are, but cutting right to the chase, and we've still got more show to talk about, but I mean, the real way to be empathetic is to realize that
who
the
you are.
same, yeah, who we are. That'll automatically make us empathetic. Okay. Okay. End the show, I guess. We'll see you next week. No, we've got more to talk about. How about there's such an irony here. Irony. I'm not sure which way to say that. It's such an ironic part that ego doesn't let us be empathetic. And yet we've talked about ego at great length. Ego isn't even real. Ego is when we don't have self-confidence, we're insecure, and we put this ego up there to try to protect ourselves, to make ourselves feel better. And so it's because of an insecurity, it's because of a lack of something that we pretend to be something we're not, and then our ego takes over. Isn't it ironic that that person that is the most vulnerable is actually the one that should be empathetic? He or she really should be able to connect to other people because of their insecurity, their lack of confidence. They should be able to relate to other people's pain so easily, but instead they pretend to have this ego, and this ego takes over, and now they can't be empathetic. Isn't there an ironic aspect to that?
The thing is, like sugar, it tastes so good, but it's not good for you.
Right?
Similarly, ego feels good. You feel important. But that's erroneous. Now, thinking it's ego means you are separated from the universal thing, and you are yourself. I'm me. That is ego. When I'm absent, I am the universal power, and the body is gifted to me. I don't exist. There's no ego. Ego happens only when I think I am a separate person. I am a man, I am this age, I am handsome, I have this job and I have this title, I have owned this house and I own this. The moment more eyes are involved in your thinking and your saying, you are disconnecting yourself from the supreme power. And you are basically transporting yourself into the egoic, secluded mode. You're alone. you are separated. And as a consequence, when you don't have empathy, in absence of ego, only empathy exists. When ego is there, there is no empathy. And in absence of empathy, you cannot communicate. That's why you are not able to communicate with people. And in absence of your communications, you are lonely.
Yeah. Right. And then our ego goes up even more to offset that.
Yeah.
Because we're even less secure, even more lonely.
Yes.
You know, I just realized the more eyes we have, the more we can't see the truth.
Yes.
Right? All right, we're coming back. We've got stress-free living today, talking about, well, we thought we were going to talk about empathy, and we are, but we're also talking about ego. We're talking about gratefulness. We're talking about what that formula is for us to have empathy in our lives. When we come back, I want to talk about why we really want to have empathy, why we really need to have empathy in our life. That's how we're going to wrap it up when we come back on today's Stress Free Living. Stay with us. Okay, your turn, everybody. Share a thought, a question?
I have a lot more to talk about it, explaining my understanding, but I'll give you some of my points that I may not have enough time. Actually, unfortunately, I have another Zoom meeting at 10. There is what the Ratanjit is pointing out is a lot of true facts in a sense. First of all, just to clear those numbers, the communication effectiveness is 7% by words, like he's pointing out, 38% by tone of your voice, and 58% comes from the body language, especially from the eyes. So that's what, especially if you show, like he said, your eyes, but your face mostly. So face and body language, 55%, the word 7%, and your tone of voice, 38%. That study was done actually in 60s, he's pointing out. I think that person's name was Albert Marabi. He did studies in 50s and 60s, he published it. But anyway, so coming back to the point, to understand or to have empathy, you need two special things. First is your ability or high EQ, not IQ. And that's what I think Ratanjit is pointing out. Because if you have a high IQ, you don't necessarily have high EQ. And high IQ can often have or boil down to ego. The other issue that we need to understand, to have empathy, you need high EQ, but you also need ability to listen. If you don't listen to other person in detail, looking at their eyes, their body language, what they're saying, then you can't have empathy, because empathy is feeling by listening.
We are back on Stress Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi, yours truly, Ray Samich, having amazing conversations with our guests, our Zoom guests, and I always apologize because we have such wonderful talks, and then we have to go back on our show. But we do continue these conversations after the show. So if you'd like to be a part of these, kind of on our unique group, please do feel free to join us. Ratanjit, let me go with where Ken was at, one of our great callers, Dr. Ken. He brought up the idea of listening, and we haven't said that word once today. We've talked about, feeling the other emotions and thinking about what other people are thinking and what they're feeling and sensing that. Listening really is a critical part of the whole process, isn't it? If we don't take in the situation there's no way that we can understand how we should act.
Once you have empathy, you automatically are inclined to understand the other's perspective. And to understand others' perspective, you have to listen. You have to. So, a good communicator generally asks questions, encourages the communication talk from others by questioning. And when you are in the egoic mode, you are always talking, you are not listening. Your communication is about, I can tell you, I have this much experience, I have this thing, I have seen it all. Let me tell you how you should live your life. And the other person completely closes to listen. And you talk about the basic listening is your feedback from, which is absolutely essential. It is without listening and without empathy, you cannot listen. Empathy is a fundamental requirement for listening. Otherwise, you are basically let the other person talk and you are thinking something else which you are going to say. You are not listening.
Okay.
Listening is a total phenomena. You cannot listen without empathy. Listening doesn't give you empathy. Empathy gives you listening.
And the distinction you're making there is what we all have practiced, where we're listening to something, but we're really not paying attention. We're focused on something else. Our brain is someplace else, and somebody's talking to us, and then suddenly they said, "Are you listening?" And you're saying, "Oh, gee, I guess I'm not. I really didn't hear what you were saying. My brain was elsewhere." So if we're in an empathetic mode, truly with empathy, part of that is our undivided attention to that person that we're feeling the empathy for. We genuinely, sincerely want to hear what they're saying.
Also, when you are listening with empathy, you hear what is not said.
Because
So,
of body language and tone?
yeah,
Because
body
of the
language and tone. And because what you are saying through words is limited, because you are saying, you are sharing something with somebody, you have some contamination of little ego. You are elevating what you are trying to say rather than telling the truth. So empathy allows you to bypass that.
Hmm.
You are able to listen to what somebody is really saying.
That's a really huge point, Ratanjit. You have to take an extra minute on that, because there's so many conversations that you do have with somebody, and you hear their words, but you know that there's more to that story. You know that you're just hearing words, but that's not really what's going on with that person. And I never realized that you were getting that feeling because you're reading the body language, you're reading the tone, and your empathy is allowing you to say what is really behind these words. Again, we think those words are everything. So somebody opens up to us and talks to us with words, but it's so much more than that. How do we activate this to the highest level? I mean, is it, you said we can't will it. You said that at the very beginning of the show. We just can't make a decision today that says I'm going to be more empathetic. Is there is there a process we can go through to allow this to be a bigger part of our life?
Why do we want to be empathetic? Why do we want to listen to somebody?
I
Why
mean,
would we?
my if you're asking, is that a rhetorical question? Okay, I thought you were asking me why.
So,
Okay.
so the question is that really you're trying to first knowing who you are makes you realize the other person is the divine force present in them. Sure, they have bad habits, they have ego, they have this. So your purpose of life becomes clear. Purpose of life becomes to serve the human, that divine power present in everyone. So now to assess what is the best way to serve, you have to listen, you have to understand, you have to feel their pain. So basically, it is about serving others by listening or by understanding. So our whole purpose of life really is, I use the word to add the highest value in everything, in every thought, and every action. And that is also the secret of success. When you are in front of a customer, you want to add value to that customer. You don't want to sell product. Once you focus on making sure that you are listening to add value, and if you are with your friends or with your family, with your children, you are basically trying to add the highest value by serving them. And in order to serve, to achieve that to the highest level, listening is important, empathy is important. All those things suddenly become the tools to conduct your mission of life to add the highest value. So ultimately, it is all tied up to one thing. Why are you serving others? I want to be famous. I want to be rich. No, I want to pay my highest homage to the divine power present in them. I want to serve them. So ultimately, it falls down to who you are. Your whole life is constructed by the fundamental knowledge, fundamental knowing that you are the divine power, which is the same divine power present in others. So your only purpose of this short-lived life is to serve that divinity present in all. And part of that serving is listening. Part of that serving listening comes from having the empathy, having the feeling of the pain. Everything all of a sudden falls into place. Right?
Ratanjit, I don't know if I should even add anything to that because that was such a beautiful summary. But let me just add on a practical side, as beautifully spiritual as that was, the ability to connect with people in our human form is also so enriching and fulfilling to be able to have a bond, have a connection with people at this level is just so infinitely rewarding. And while you mentioned ultimate success, and absolutely it's true, and adding the highest value is tremendously true, but there's also just something about the connection, about the relationship that you have when you are working at an empathetic level. I mean, it is as good as it can possibly be to connect with people in this way. And if you have to overcome your your ego, and you have to be in a state of gratefulness in order to have it, those are things that we want to get rid of or have anyway. We want to get rid of our ego. Nobody wants to have an ego, and we want to be grateful. Everybody knows that that's the way we should live. So it just seems like this is the formula here for a beautiful life. Thank you for sharing everything with us here today, as you always do. Such wisdom and wonder. We appreciate. And to all of our audience, our Zoom, and however you are watching or listening, we thank you for being a part of us. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we are clear. And now is your chance. Ken, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead
No, you are
and
fine.
continue before you have to go.
I actually have to leave pretty soon. But anyway, just wanted to add two more quick things.
Yep.
So as Ratanjit ji is pointing out, that listening is important and empathy makes it happen. That's true. But when we listen but do not feel it, we call it hearing. We don't use the word listening. That's the difference between listening and just hearing. You're not feeling anything, you're just listening.
Mhm.
There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. So
Yes.
empathy is actual feeling, like he's pointing out throughout. And listening is without any feeling. You just listen. So Bill Clinton listened to people. And then he said, I feel your pain. But that's it. You know, he wasn't feeling their pain, because to feel the pain, to feel their understanding, you got to listen. You got to listen for a while and let them finish their story, right? If you're telling me your details, how you feel, how you suffered, how you got accident, how your bone is broken, if you don't even listen, how are you going to feel the same thing what this person is going through?
You cannot force yourself to listen.
Right. Because that's another thing he's pointing out, that you have to have an empathy. And empathy often, you are born with it. Some people, they are basically looking at watching TV, bad story, and they cry. A patient is telling you their bad story and they're crying with them because they are feeling. To develop that, it takes a lot of practice. And if you have a high IQ with an ego, like he's pointing out, you're not going to go there. You don't have a time to listen to other person. You are there to tell your story, your advice. Tell them, I am intelligent guy. You better listen to me. He's pointing out everything correctly. I'm just expanding a little bit because I have some more understanding of knowledge. So I hope, am I saying it right, Ratanjit, whatever, or do you
You're
agree?
saying that. The only thing is, what you're saying is absolutely correct. But somebody can very misconceive that empathy is a skill. It's not a
No,
skill.
you have to have a high EQ for that, not
To
IQ.
have high EQ, you have to get rid of your ego.
Yeah. No, yeah, but ego is totally separate. But if you have an ego, it's going to be very hard for you to even listen properly, like you keep on
Exactly.
pointing out.
Exactly. So when you don't have ego and you are grateful, and then when you see others, you see the divine force in them. So you have a desire to serve. Supposing you are a Catholic and you are in presence of a Pope, you have incentive to serve him.
Yeah.
Why? Because you see the divinity in that Pope. But we completely are not able to see that same divinity present in everyone. They have bad habits and good habits, but those are habits. But the real one is they're alive because of the presence of the divinity. Once you see that, that is why you get amazing reaction even from criminals. Even somebody who is not kind, they'll become kinder to you because of your paying that respect to the divinity in them, which is absolutely flawlessly expressed by your body language and your tone.
Interesting. And by the way, sometimes people can fake it. If they are, that's why we call them great actors, because they can act out anything they want. But so you can fake it out, like he's pointing out.
For a
But
while. For a while, we said, but then you'll get caught eventually.
yeah, because they are actors basically.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Right.
try to fake it out. But no, it's a great conversation. It's unfortunately it's my favorite topic, and that's what I took the chance from others. I apologize, everybody, if I took so much time extra, but I gotta go now.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
so
Doctor. Good to have
As
you.
enjoy listening to him, really.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful topic today, and beautiful points brought out. Empathy also leads to solution of many problems. Universe somehow aligns if our intention is embedded in empathy. So thank you for the session today.
Sahil?
Sahil is
Thank you for the session. Some really great points. And I really like that statistic, which was that 7% is the impact of your words, 38% is your tone, and 55% is your body language and eyes. I don't know of that statistic, so that was pretty cool. And I do have a question. So here it goes. Empathy and kindness are often quite synonymous concepts and is the best state to be in as a human being. But sometimes some individuals end up taking advantage of someone's kindness or their niceness. Like in Hindi, there's this famous phrase that goes, some individuals, when you lend them a hand to help them get back up, they instead grab your shoulder and drag you down with them. So what are your thoughts on this? And where should one draw the line between being empathetic and kind in order to safeguard ourselves?
Kindness without empathy is ego. There's a lot of people who give millions of dollars, blast their name on the buildings. That is not kindness, that is ego. When you are empathetic, your kindness doesn't need recognition. So that's the fundamental difference. When your kindness needs recognition, that is ego. And you have absence of empathy. So what was your question once again?
So my question was, in many occasions, sometimes when people are aware or certain individuals are aware that, oh, this person is really kind, they're known to be quite empathetic, more often than not, they end up taking advantage of their kindness or their niceness. So how do you safeguard yourself while being empathetic at the same time? I'm sure you must have dealt with this in your life.
When you're worried about being taken advantage of, that is coming from ego.
Oh.
You know, I'm serving the divine force. And nothing which is, I consider mine is mine. Mm-hmm. Talent which is given by the society or my intellectual brain, which is all gifted to me. And all these things which are, which I call them mine, somehow have been gifted to me to add value. So when I add value to the divine force, I cannot be taken advantage of. So that's fine.
Interesting.
You know, interesting thing is that we have this concept of you do this for me, I do this for you.
Give and take.
Yeah. So now in oneness, there's no give and take. So you have a scratch on your nose, your finger goes and scratches. When you have itch on your finger, You expect the nose to come and scratch it?
Nope.
So that is oneness. So nose has been taking advantage of you. Right?
Interesting. That's an interesting analogy and correlation. So that makes sense.
Yeah, think about
This-
oneness.
Mhm.
You
I
had
just
some.
want to, there's a little analogy here, and maybe on the surface it isn't the same thing as showing kindness or being taken advantage of. But have you ever had a situation where you caught somebody's eyes in a store or whatever, and you weren't sure if you should smile because you didn't know if they would smile back, and you didn't know how it would be received, and so you don't, and then just before they're out of eye contact, they smile at you and you don't have a
Mhm.
chance to smile back. I'm not sure if that's ever happened to you, but that type of scenario has happened to me a lot. And so I've adopted a feeling, a kind of a mantra that says I'd rather smile first and not have it returned than not smile and not have the opportunity to return the smile. Okay. And I think that's kindness too. If we're so worried about the kindness not being noticed or being taken advantage of, okay, we've lost the whole opportunity to smile. We've lost the whole opportunity to show kindness because we've been so worried that we'll be taken advantage of or that we will not have that kindness returned to us.
Mhm.
We're
Why,
supposed to smile.
Ray, why are you want to smile? When you are
I want,
grateful, that smile always exists on your face.
right, right.
So all you have to do is be grateful.
Yeah.
The byproduct of true gratefulness is a smile on your face.
You're absolutely right. I agree. But there's still this human brain that gets in the way. This human brain that doesn't want to be caught, like you just mentioned. We don't want to be taken advantage of. We don't want to look foolish. We don't want to be,
All
whatever the
ego,
case may
all
be.
ego.
Yeah, ego. It is. We all have, not all of us, but most of us have some level of ego in us.
Every single human being has ego. Don't say that some of us have ego, some of us don't.
It's a battle we
Anytime,
all fight. Huh?
anytime you are not completely in oneness, your ego is there, and we are not consciously remaining in oneness mode, and that's why every other mode we have ego.
Very good.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And just a final thought. I've always tried to understand the difference between two concepts, which, I mean, it could be a future topic for some of the sessions, which it's totally how you feel about it. I've always struggled to find the difference between self-respect, confidence in yourself, and ego. And I just want to understand the difference because self-respect is also a very big concept as well as ego. So where do you draw the line, and how do you know when you're falling into what territory?
You cannot have the true self-respect until you know yourself.
Mhm.
Once you know the real self, you have self-respect. The real self is the divine power enlivening you. So it's the same divine power present in others. So you cannot have self-respect without having the self-respect present in others.